KEETJI's Passion is the English dub of the 1975 Dutch film KEETJI TEPPEL, based on the life stories of writer and activist Neil Doff. This film is a historical biopic set in 19th century Europe, but this isn't just another one of those genteel merchant ivory dramas. A decade before he would make cybernetic classics like ROBOCOP and Total Recall, Paul Verhoeven was still making movies in the Netherlands, Dutch blockbusters like this one. This movie stars Monique van der Ven, Andrea Dalmberg, and Rutger Hauer. Arriving in Amsterdam, the Teppels are a poor country family in search of a better life, but life in the big city is ugly and filthy. KEETJI is old enough to work, but the only jobs she can find are demeaning, debilitating, even poisonous. As time passes, father can't keep a job, and mom keeps having babies. In fact, the only one in the growing family bringing money home is KEETJI's sister, working at the convent, a cute nickname for the local brothel. Eventually, sister's too much of a drunk to clock in at the brothel, so mom sends KEETJI to freelance out on the streets. By a stroke of luck, KEETJI is recruited to be an artist model, and soon she's rubbing elbows with the well-to-do. She captures the affection of a young ambitious banker and begins to taste the finer things in life. She also learns its cost. In a dog-eat-dog world, what price is she willing to pay? This is a foreign language costume drama. If that sounds like homework to you, you probably won't like this movie. If this sounds like Oscar bait, it kind of was. Verhoeven's previous film, Turkish Delight, was one of the biggest movies in the history of the Netherlands, and competed for Best Foreign Film at the Academy Awards that year. So, Turkish Delight's producer reunited the stars, director, and cinematographer, and attempted to catch lightning twice. But Verhoeven wanted to make an epic commentary about the failure of capitalism in the Netherlands, a Dutch Les Miserables, and that just wasn't in the budget. But even scaled down, KEETJI TEPPEL cost more than any Dutch film production ever had before. And while the movie made its money back, it wasn't the phenomenon its predecessor was, at home or abroad. Now, it might seem odd to lump this movie with exploitation films, but Verhoeven wasn't interested in pulling punches about the cruelty of city life. The first half of the film is so vividly textured, its squalor so realized, that it's easy to imagine what the world smells like and feels like, and then to see how the city changes the Teppel family. By the time you get to the shadow puppet rape scene, you can see how Verhoeven was destined to be the first NC-17 director. The distributors probably chose to name KEETJI's Passion for the US release because they were trying to sell Americans on an X-rated foreign costume film. Rated X because most Europeans have different standards of nudity. And yes, this film includes a cameo by Rutger Hauer's Tower of Power. The hope was that art house audiences would forgive a plainly dubbed indictment of 19th century capitalism for a glimpse of TNA not yet available on American TV sets. While this film doesn't have the grand signatures of Verhoeven's sci-fi epics, it does feature some of the themes he'd focus on throughout his filmography. In his movies, society isn't just a background, it's a character, and the most vivid stories are usually on the bottom. Verhoeven judges those at the top of the food chain and how they dehumanize everyone else. He examines the politics and currency of sex, with a female as an audience guide. Besides Verhoeven, another crew member that would make the leap to Hollywood is cinematographer Jan de Bont. His camera work pulls us into KEETJI's world, with some striking compositions comparable to the Dutch masters. Unfortunately, there aren't any action set pieces in this film. Those creative strengths would really shine once de Bont got to Hollywood, when he would be able to contribute to the visual vocabulary of 80s and 90s action movies as a cinematographer and a director. Monique van der Ven, playing KEETJI, was married to Jan de Bont at the time of filming, which did make filming her nude scenes a little awkward. She moved to the US with him, appeared on some TV shows, but wouldn't miss Hollywood when the marriage ended around 1983. She returned to Netherlands and remains a big deal there on the big screen and on Dutch television. And she starred in the first Dutch film to win the foreign language Oscar, the 1986 film Aanslag, The Assault. Rutger Hauer would collaborate with Verhoeven on 3 more films, but he would forge his own path to Hollywood. In 1981, Hauer would work on 2 films, Nighthawks and Blade Runner. that would launch his Hollywood career and cement Hauer as an international star for the next 4 decades. So if you find yourself in front of this movie and you're not already on board with watching a historical costume melodrama with smutty undertones, put on your auteur theory hat and compare this film to the Verhoeven and de Bont films that you do love. You might recognize more of your favorite stories in there than at first glance.